think verifying humanness on the internet will become a truly global scale problem when you use your Face ID. So it's a one-to-one verification, and you need to make sure that individual did not verify before. One of the only modalities that actually works on kind of truly billion people scale is the eye. The eye has a lot of entropy in it. Even twins have different structure there. First of all, I think it never could have happened without SAM.
So even if, let's say, to hack these type of thing, is it possible that somebody could get access to it?
Of course, concerns about like, okay, what are the privacy implications? Do you sell my data?
Alex, yeah, thanks for your time. I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Really looking forward to this.
I came across super interesting project that you're working on. And so today we just want to hear more about it. But
right.
I guess the goal here is to figure out your kind of vision, what kind of philosophy you have, because you guys are like doing some world-changing things, and I think the magnitude of it is just so big that probably regular people can't even grasp the concept. So, what's your background?
So, I grew up in Germany originally, in Bavaria, close to Munich. That's where I did my undergraduate studies. Back then was physics, mechanical engineering, but even before that, I did all these like science competitions and always was building things fairly early into programming. And then within my studies, I got very deep into theoretical physics. And it was right around the time where people were talking about the importance of AI in theoretical physics. Or back then, actually, people did not talk about it as AI, but deep learning.
Yeah.
So that's what I did then. So I basically applied deep learning to theoretical physics, and went into Los Angeles and wanted to do that as my PhD. But then Sam Altman started the company already, Tools for Humanity, and I originally interviewed with the company and then later became the CEO. So that's kind of a very quick.
It's very quick.
Very, very quick background, but that's how it came together.
Yeah.
So basically, I was super interested in physics, and because of physics, got into AI.
Yeah.
And because of AI, met Sam, and we started working in this company together.
What do you see as a relation between physics and AI? How can those two actually coexist?
Well, so there's a couple things. Like, the first one is a lot of the researchers in AI actually have a physics background.
Oh, really? Okay.
Or like physics and math is probably a large degree. That is because AI is mathematics, right? Fundamentally, neural networks is all about mathematics, and so that background I think is very helpful. But I think the much more important question is, what will AI do to physics? And I think it will completely change it. We'll probably. My hope is at least that as we make progress with AI in the coming years, we will make decades of progress with physics. And that is because everything we do in physics and all the things you learn in high school are all approximations about the real world, right? So it's all Newton's law. Newton's law is not actually real. Everything is quantum, but we talk about it as Newton's law. And so we build a mathematical approximation to the world, and I think deep learning or AI will be able to do it hopefully much better. And so I can totally see a case where in 20 years, being a physicist means that you try to understand what an AI is trying to tell you, or what an AI encompassed in it about a certain situation or a certain problem. And so you sit in front of a computer and you ask, okay, how do we go from point A to point B, and the AI tells you that. So
even before we get into crypto, I think since you brought up AI, it's like we use ChatGPT right now, and that's not even probably close to the real capability of things like artificial general intelligence. I think people still have no idea how it's going to change everything, but you guys must be already, you must be betting on the certain type of future where AI takes over. So what does that future look like? People really don't have to do anything.
AI progress doesn't seem to stop anytime soon. I think that's the first thing to say. I think So much money is flowing into the industry. So many smart people are getting into the industry. All the big companies are working on it. So I think the progress will, if anything, probably accelerate, especially in the coming years. It might be that at some point we will need a complete new technical breakthrough that we currently don't have.
Right.
But at least currently the biggest bet of the industry is all about scaling, right? So it's like you try to make the computers that you train these AIs on, you just try to make them one order of magnitude bigger, basically by year. And with every order of magnitude that you make the computers bigger, you make the neural networks bigger, and so kind of the brain, in some sense, gets bigger and more competent. And so,
right,
I think like a lot of people are scared of AI, and there's a lot of kind of AI doomerism,
which I guess is sort of founded on this reality that a lot of people are sort of losing jobs because, obviously automation-wise, they can do a way better job, right? So I think that's where some of that fear might come from.
Yeah, I mean, so that is one part. One part is like, will we all be out of jobs? But then there's even kind of the much more extreme fear of like, is AI gonna just kill everyone?
Kill everybody, yeah.
And I think in first approximation, so of course there's like a small probability that something really goes wrong, but I think the default outcome is that we just build very, very capable systems that will be very powerful tools that will make science, engineering, all of those things go much, much faster and help us to come up with new things that are probably really hard to imagine right now. And so I think job displacement, I think that one is real, and something to generally worry about. And the Industrial Revolution was very similar, where a lot of jobs have been displaced. And I'm not trying to marginalize that, that's a very important problem. But on kind of humanity scale, most importantly, I think it means progress, and I think that's what we're all looking for and what we need.
So do you really see how once AI becomes so efficient and effective at effectively creating the type of output that, can you really imagine us living in this post-scarcity type of world where there's so much abundance that people really don't have to work?
Yeah, I can see that happening. I think.
Oh, really? Okay.
I think, I mean, very practically, if you look at it today, like the way we live today, and you would show that someone that lived 100 years ago, today would already feel like abundance.
Yeah,
right?
true.
It's like everyone has healthcare.
Yeah.
Basically, everyone has food, at least in kind of in large parts of the world.
Yeah.
And so I think efficiency will go up drastically. Prices will fall. So many goods that currently are very expensive might just become much, much cheaper and so much more affordable. I think it's a very practical way of understanding it. I think not having to work, a practical way of looking at it is, I think the purchasing power of $1 will just be much, much more. So you will be able to afford much more. That today feels like a lot with way less money. So and I mean, that's amazing.
I think this whole concept of universal basic income, or UBI, has been mentioned many times, but I mean, a lot of people say it's one of those things that people might get in the future. Like, what's sort of your take on this whole thing? Because to a certain extent, I think people during COVID could have experienced this, for example, when government gave out a lot of support payments. But do you see sort of like UBI as one of those things that could, for example, really address this issue of growing wealth gaps or income inequality?
It's a very complicated question, because I think if you look at it from today's lens, I think the answer would be a clear no.
Wow.
Right? It's like today.
Right.
And that is because I think UBI, of course, has a very political viewpoint to it, right? And I think what we hopefully have learned in the kind of recent history is that capitalism is the way that everything flourishes and we create the most wealth, and so I think we shouldn't deviate from that. However, I would actually not. Both Sam and I talked about this in the past, also as it relates to Worldcoin. But I mean, Sam funded a kind of a UBI experiment and all those things. AI could actually change the dynamic. I could see a path where, for an average person, it is just totally tractable to not work, or just we completely change the way we think about work even. Right. I could totally see that happening. And so with a shift that is as drastic as AGI or even superhuman intelligence in some sense, it's really hard to predict what will happen. And I think something like UBI or kind of other things like that, I think might be on the table, even as crazy that sounds today.
The reason why I'm particularly interested in the whole concept of UBI, which is also related to what you guys are doing, because my understanding of Worldcoin is that in the future, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but in the future when everybody has to, receive some sort of a UBI, you need to verify whether they're actually human or not.
Right.
So that is one use case, obviously, of creating some sort of Worldcoin. But do you have any other utility or use case for having to prove that you are like a real human being, as opposed to being a bot, let's say?
I hope so. So I think it's with ChatGPT, the original launch of ChatGPT, we achieved a milestone that people in computer science have talked about for like a long, long time,
right?
Which is passing the Turing Test, right? Which is meaning you talk or you interface with a chat, let's say, and you don't know anymore if what you're dealing with is an actual genuine person or if it's an AI system. And there was always like this big dream, like when I studied computer science, kind of that was the end goal that people talked about with AI, and we just quickly walked through that milestone and somehow just ignored the significance of that, or at least sometimes it feels like that. So what I think will happen is that I think many parts of the internet will require us to know that we're actually dealing with a person, right? It's kind of somehow obvious, right? I think social media is a good example. I think Elon talks a lot about the fact that there's bots on Twitter and these kinds of things, but the progress of AI will continue, right? You will have real-time photorealistic video generation. You will have very, very smart AI systems that can generate any kind of response basically in real time, and you can deploy thousands of these. And so I think something like a social network without any idea if what you're talking to is a human or an AI system, I think becomes way less useful, or it actually might turn out to be dangerous, right? Because like a lot of our democracy happens on social media, right?
That's true.
A lot of our opinions that we form and then later kind of use to vote and make our voting decisions happen on social media. And let's say other governments, hostile governments influencing elections is something we've seen in the past.
Yes.
Right? And doing that with potentially superhuman AI systems, or at least very strong AI systems, I think is going to be something we should be really concerned about or worry about. And so the quick pitch is, I think, with the passing of the Turing Test, having a system to distinguish we are actually interacting or dealing with humans, or at least kind of human-empowered AI systems, because I think most of what we do will be enhanced by AI, right? So it's like every text I will write will probably be auto-completed or something by AI, or even videos generated. But at least it should be one human, one AI system, not one human, a million AI systems.
Right.
So yeah, I think it will turn out to be a very, very important piece of technology.
And how does something like Worldcoin, how did that sort of play into this whole plan to obviously make sure that, so it's a crypto, I think, and I understand that you guys are like trying to onboard like 1 billion people.
Right.
to create the largest financial network in the world, which sounds really cool. But why are you guys trying to do that? What's sort of like the purpose behind it?
When we started, which was now roughly 4.5, well, like almost 5 years, I guess, Sam had the idea for the company at the back of his mind, I think, for a couple of years longer than that. But the initial motivation, I think there was two big pieces to it. One was this idea that the progress of AI will continue to accelerate. AGI will happen probably in the coming decades, which back then was a very crazy statement. Like now it sounds like a very normal thing to say, and we just casually talk about the fact that we might have AGI systems or ASI systems, but 5 years ago that was a very out there opinion.
Right.
But in any case, Sam had high conviction that will happen. So the question was, what kind of infrastructure will we need for the world? Like what kind of digital infrastructure do we think we will need at a global scale?
Yeah.
And so that's why the company is called Tools for Humanity. Very simple and descriptive name.
Yeah.
and the second piece was actually that both him and I were fans of Bitcoin early on, and of course still are. I actually think like crypto as a technology, there's like so many things that went up and down, and scams happened and whatever, and so like it really at times has a really bad reputation. But the underlying premise, I think, is an incredibly important one. Is like, how can we build kind of truly accessible, decentralized technology that has all of those important properties that comes with that. And so the question was, okay, what can we do to get to a billion people scale? What would that take? And so the very simple idea was, well, we think verifying humanness on the internet will become a kind of a truly global scale problem, and we will need that.
Yeah.
And if we were to successfully launch a digital currency by giving ownership in it to every human, and use such a proof of personhood system to make sure that it doesn't get, that incentive mechanism doesn't get scammed by bots, etc., then those two things together can create a strong feedback loop and really scale quite large. And as the network gets larger and larger, more and more use cases will become interesting and will start to happen. So kind of at the core of it was really, we have this company value at scale first. So everything was about the scale of the network and scale of the people actually using the systems, because both proof of personhood and all kinds of financial transactions require large scale. So we were obsessed with that.
So to be clear, the existing solutions like Bitcoin or any other sort of like a protocol technology, they are not able to go that far in achieving that type of objective.
So it's just a very different thing. I mean, Bitcoin is incredibly important, but I think at this point approximating it is a store of value. It is a non-governmental store of value.
Yep.
And that is a very important thing to have. But what we really care about is rolling out proof of personhood on kind of global scale. So it's the first time we can actually verify that I'm a unique human to all kinds of services online without revealing who I actually am. So you stay completely private. It's non-governmental, so you don't leak any information to anyone. And we use that to create an actual kind of crypto financial network. So everyone has a wallet. It's based on Ethereum. You can send stable coins to your friends. We have an app called World App. So it has over 10 million users. So it's one of the largest wallets in the world.
Oh, so you guys already have that wallet?
Yes, we already have that. And so crypto is completely abstracted away. It just feels like Cash App or Venmo or something like that. And you can just send US dollars or whatever local currency to your friends.
Right.
But because we have both Worldcoin, the currency, and the proof of personhood, we can just create a really large network of people that actually use that service because they get incentivized by the actual token to verify.
So when you communicate that type of message to, let's say, the populace, the regular folks,
right?
Like what sort of people's reaction when you talk about, oh, we would love to get this whole like a proof of humanity type of thing going, what's sort of like a regular people's reaction?
Well, I think pre-ChatGPT, it was just, oh, you're crazy. In the last year, I think that message resonates quite a bit. I think it's now very easy to understand. It's very easy to follow that argument. And so I think at this point, the reaction is actually pretty good. I think there's a lot of course, concerns about like, okay, what are the privacy implications? Do you sell my data? There's all these kinds of questions that emerge. I think we have very strong answers to all of them. Like we're actually building a protocol that is completely anonymous, etc. So, but I think that's the second order, is that you need to explain the actual technology really well.
So people would argue that, oh, well, there's many ways you can verify how unique you are. That's why you have fingerprints and facial recognition.
Right.
But obviously that's not enough. Is it? Like, that's what you guys are saying, right?
Yeah. So the first thing that is important to understand is, first of all, you need the property of uniqueness, right? Because that's, if you really think, like, for example, CAPTCHAs or something like that, they used to maybe give you some confidence that what you're interacting with is an actual person. Now this doesn't work anymore because AI systems can solve CAPTCHAs too, but at least at some point they did that. However, you could do multiple CAPTCHAs after another, right? So you didn't have a uniqueness property.
Right.
And so why that is a problem is that, let's say, I'm just using the Twitter example because I think it's so easy to understand, is what you actually want to protect against is that you have one individual with kind of 1,000 AIs or something.
Yeah.
And so you need uniqueness. That is the critical property. And when you use your iPhone, for example, and you use Face ID, what that system actually verifies is that you're the same person again logging in, right? So it's a one-to-one verification.
Right.
Versus if you want to solve this proof of personhood or proof of unique humanness problem, you need to compare one individual against everyone else, and you need to make sure that that individual did not verify before. So it goes from 1 to 1 to 1 to n. And the problem is that with that transition, the problem gets literally exponentially harder. So you need much more entropy, much more information about each participant to make sure the system doesn't break down. And so you can, for each of those things that you just mentioned, so you have fingerprint, you have face biometrics, you can just kind of mathematically state how much entropy is in each of these, and how far would that let you scale. And so fingerprint is actually relatively low, so after tens of millions of people, the whole system would start breaking down. And one of the only modalities that actually works on kind of truly billion people scale is the eye. The eye has a lot of entropy in it. That's why it's used in many airports as well. Like many airports actually, when you
you have to do that.
Yeah, I think actually when you enter Singapore, for example, I think they have ours. However, don't quote me on that. I'm not sure.
I just came back from Singapore.
Right, so but in any case, a couple of airports have that for that reason.
Is that because there's certain thing that's stored within the eyes, or like iris or something like that? Or
yeah, so it's just the structure of your iris. Like it's the muscle,
right,
that actually randomly develops when you're very young. From like 1 to 5, that muscle forms pretty randomly. So even twins have a different structure there.
I see. So that's truly unique. That everybody's different.
Right. It's very
even
unique.
At like a billion people scale.
Like everyone in the world could end up having a world ID because of that. And so that's why we had to go with that direction, even though it might seem face value like a little odd. It's like, why do you use iris, I think? But it's kind of the only way to actually build such a system at that scale that we intend. And if you think the mission is critical, then you have to do whatever supports the mission. And so yeah, that's why the eye. And then there's a lot of things that happen in cryptography that actually now allow you to build such a system in a way that it's fully pseudonymous. So like no one actually has to have the data. So we use something that is called secure multi-party computation. So you take a picture of an eye, you calculate what is called an iris code, but then you actually break that up. So you delete the picture, then you break that apart between different computers, essentially.
Right.
So not each of them has that information.
Yeah.
And then after that, even you use zero knowledge proofs which is a way to essentially, I can prove you something without revealing the actual information. So
that's possible.
That is possible.
Okay.
So like a very simple example is age verification. So I could prove to you that I'm actually under 18 without sharing, or over 18, I guess is more useful, without sharing the actual passport with you. And so we use that similar technology for World ID. So you can go to a service, you can verify to a website and say, I'm an actual unique person. I did not use your service before, without that service knowing anything about you. And that's what we think such technology should look like and be built like.
So then the people might ask, okay, well, how do you capture that information in the first place?
Right.
So presumably you need some sort of a device.
Yes.
To capture the inner workings of the iris. So that's why you guys developed a device, right?
Yes, we did.
Yeah. Do you want to explain to people what that device
looks
like?
Of course. So we built a device, it's called the Orb. It's 20 centimeter sphere. Actually, a new one is coming very soon.
Oh, really?
It's going to look very cool. But it is a fully open source, very technical device that solves the problem. So it both makes sure that it's not being fooled. So you don't show the display or you try to attack it. So there's a lot of security in such a device.
Did you also help build it?
Oh yeah, we built it completely in-house.
Wow, okay.
So a lot of, like $50 million and a lot of manpower went into building that.
So initially, was it always planned to build a type of hardware, or you just, out of necessity, well, we have to build something? Like, how did it come about?
It was one of those things where we actually didn't want to do any of these things. We just started with that mission statement of, okay, so like one, how will AI change the world? And two, how can we create the largest kind of financial network on the planet? What would it take? And then we just reasoned our way through that. So the first year was basically just research. We built a lot of prototypes, we thought through a lot of things. And one of the things we thought of back then, which back then sounded crazy, but it was this idea that we will have deepfakes that are basically real time. And
actually, that's happening right now, isn't it?
Yeah, that's happening. We got very, well, maybe not lucky, but I think the timing was as we predicted. So I think we got that somewhat right. But back then it sounded like a crazy bet.
Did you know what happened last week in Korea? They, the regulators, the lawmakers, passed something to prevent deepfake porn in Korea, because apparently it was becoming quite problematic.
Already?
Where, wow. I don't know if you know this, but in Korea, porn is banned, right? So people cannot access any porn, like even if you're above the age of 18. And apparently that actually led to a lot of people just sharing their regular friends and whatever, like, you know, and then they would obviously use deepfake technology to, and then use like Telegram to like share that kind of thing. So it just blew up as this like so everybody's, but then, you know, on one hand, you don't want to accuse like every guy of being a potential criminal, right? But they're almost like moving towards a point of like, if you have a Telegram app on your phone, you're like a criminal, which is not right? Because everybody uses criminal, but then we know what happened with the Telegram CEO as well. So anyway, I think this whole, like it's moving so fast, and people just don't know how to deal with it, especially the lawmakers. So like the timing of it is quite interesting that you guys were able to predict that as well, like many years ago, I suppose.
So in any case, so we thought that will eventually happen. Yeah. And so that means that you cannot, essentially you cannot trust a phone. Like for many reasons, there's also just security reasons, but the simple reason is that you will not trust any video stream. Like, because I can just take a picture of you and I can generate a video of you.
Yeah, that's right.
So we will need a trusted hardware device that actually can check that we're not dealing with an actual display. We don't actually look at a deepfake. Right. So that was thing number one. And the second one was, well, to be able to scale to billions of people, we will need iris biometrics versus anything else. And so we will need a custom imaging device. And so we back then we were like 4 guys, well, technically 5, and one of them was Sam Altman. So there was like something we could do a lot of things, but this idea that we would need to build a hardware device and distribute it globally was a very painful idea. So we tried everything to argue around that, and
because you really didn't want to build it
and find another way. But
right.
we kind of, from every point we looked at, we couldn't come up with a different idea. So we just decided, okay, let's do it. Let's go down a path. Let's build these eventually hundreds of thousands, hardware devices that we will need to distribute around the world. But if our assumptions are correct, if what we think the future will look like is correct, we will really need it. So.
So the ones they're using at the airports for like some different governments, like that's not even like at a it's not even comparable to what you guys built, right?
It's not all of these are way worse, but that's not actually the much bigger problem. Is that this is by definition a global problem. The internet is global, or pretty global. Like, it's getting actually somewhat segmented. It doesn't really matter that Singapore has a perfect identity system if the majority of the rest of the world doesn't have that, right? That will not help us to protect our internet services that we care about.
Yeah.
And so
collaborating with governments.
Yeah, collaborating with governments it's just for that reason is not an option, but rather we decided, well, we need to build an open technology stack. That's why everything we do is open source, and that essentially sets the standard. And then eventually, at some point, maybe governments might decide to use part of the technology stack. Right? Like, there's a couple of use cases for governments that might be interesting, but it cannot go the other way around. Like, we cannot use government systems because in many places of the world they just don't exist, and or they might actually not follow what we believe in, which is such a system should be fully privacy preserving, et cetera, et cetera. So we had to go a separate way and engineer our way out.
So you developed this beautiful, never before seen device.
Yes.
And then the idea is to use that device to scan people. How long does it take typically?
Yeah, so you download an app, and let's say we're active, or the system is active in somewhere close to you live. You just see locations.
Yep.
So some of it looks similar to these like scooter apps or something, and you go there, and it might be at a convenience store, at your corner store, something like that, and you just scan a QR code, and then 20 seconds later you're verified, and then you can use that basically in many applications. So it's super simple. Of course, there's like the friction of you need to go to an actual device, especially when we're early, which we currently are. Currently, there is not all over the place. They're not everywhere, so there's like some friction attached to that, but that will change.
And then do you guess some sort of when you say verification, you receive some sort of like a passport, right? Is it called passport?
Well, you receive what is called a World ID, or your World ID is verified. It looks like a passport in the app because our head of product, Thiago, thought that that's how it should look like. But what it really is it's a pair of cryptographic keys that you then can use to issue zero knowledge proofs to different services. So it's pretty cool stuff.
Let's say you reach that critical mass, whatever the number is.
Yep.
Can you imagine like governments, like the states, being okay with this? Because they always try to regulate, and they're like, no. Like, for example, if any of our citizens were to do this, like just the same way China, let's say, just ban crypto, let's say, although people might be doing it at a governmental level, if they say something or they come down with some sort of a regulation, like what do you imagine that could look like, and then how do you respond to that?
Well, I think it will really look different for all kinds of different situations and governments, obviously. Right. I think, again, if we are right in what we believe in and how we think the coming years will play out, I think this will be such a critical piece of technology that it will seem almost ridiculous to, or not almost, it will certainly look ridiculous to ban it, like you would ban the internet or something like that.
Which many, especially countries in Asia, do.
Right, which like you can do,
right,
but it might not be for the best of everyone involved, right? And so currently what we do is especially because there's like so many questions about this, right? Because like you use secure multi-party computation and zero-knowledge proofs, and then you have an iris scanning orb that is distributed around the world, and there's like somehow crypto involved. So there's like a lot of things that raise questions from regulators, and so that's also why I'm wearing a suit today. Is well, you just have to explain the actual technology. Like I think it is actually trying to solve and really help with actually a set of very important problems. I actually hope eventually regulators should welcome this. And I think that's where we will get to, but it will probably take some time.
And so far, would you say Korea is sort of open to the idea?
I think so. I think Korea is, overall a very impressive country, of course. And it kind of strikes me as like a kind of technology hub in Asia, generally. But also the government, I think, is very, not only open, but also very progressive, I think. So whoever I met here, I think always is very, very quick and has a very good map of technology and what's happening in the world. So I'm personally very excited about Korea. That's why I'm here.
I think I saw, there was like in Yongsan or like that I saw that whereas you could get your iris scan, there's like a device there.
Yeah, we operate here already.
Right, already. So
yes. It's a very small operation still, but it's already live here.
Yeah. Just kind of exciting, but at the same time, like you said, it's just so uncertain, the future, what it looks like.
Always is.
True.
It's nothing new.
Yeah. But when you think about it, like you're obviously an optimist, and then everything hopefully goes okay. But how would you like steelman, let's say, like maybe any criticism? And I'm not familiar with any particular criticism you might face.
Right.
But I could imagine that this could be quite controversial, right?
Oh, it totally is.
Yeah. So, what kind of arguments have you heard that, and how do you sort of steelman that? At the same time, we know exactly how to deal with that.
Well, I think the good thing is I have not I've not been interacting with criticism that was particularly hard to respond to, right? Because like mostly it is misunderstandings or just a shallow understanding of like how things are, right? Like because, for example,
let's say like a most common misconception. So what could it be?
Well, let's start with the basics, right? It's like, okay, so this is a tool for surveillance, right? Well, no, obviously not. Here's the 10 reasons why. Or, okay, so you're gonna sell my data. Well, first of all, we don't have your data. Second of all, no. It would be a very stupid thing to do, right? But it's like, it's that kind of level.
Right.
So it's actually pretty easy to respond to if you just tell the truth and just say what we actually do.
So even if it was possible, let's say, to hack these type of thing,
right?
Is it possible that somebody could get access to it? But even if they could get access to it, there's nothing there.
Yeah, so actually the system is designed in a way that we have a company value that is fail-safe privacy and security. And so what that means is that even if all systems that you could imagine breaking down, the outcome is still not harmful to any individual. That's the very simple rule. Now, oversimplifying it, but in our case, let's say someone very sophisticated would hack systems or whatever. Like you can construe a set of 10 very unlikely things all coming together and like something goes wrong. Then still, and you would actually have a biometric picture of you, let's say, then the only thing someone could state is that you have verified before, yes or no. Right? So they could not, also not trying to downplay this, because if you're maybe living in an oppressive government and you have verified for Worldcoin, and that alone is already a problem. So there's like very edge cases of where that could be problematic.
Right.
But then again, even to get to that place, like 10 things
have to go wrong.
To go wrong that I don't think even can go wrong. So
Right. Where does this type of forward-looking mindset come from?
Look,
do you just?
I think it was personally actually a very humbling experience, because this will sound crazy, but I think actually what it was like first of all, I think it never could have happened without Sam. I think that's the first thing, because I think no investor would have given us money, probably, especially 4.5 years ago. Like I remember in the first fundraise we did, it was right after the crypto collapse back then.
And there was no like an open AI as it is now.
Right. So there was like no AI hype. There was like crypto was basically just considered dead.
Right.
And I remember we went to the first investor, and we pitched, and it was like the pitch was like something like, oh, like AGI is coming and crypto will turn out to be this like very important technology for the world, and so like this is what we do. And the guy was like, yeah, you're first of all, you're crazy, and second of all, I think crypto is dead other than Ethereum and Bitcoin. So that was like our first fundraise. So it was it really, especially the first 2 years, I think mentally we just had to be totally fine with failure.
Right.
Like failure was the expected outcome, very much so. I think it was like, okay, what we do very likely will not end up working to probably 95%. But if it ends up working, it might be one of the most important things in the world.
Right.
And personally, for me, it was actually just very humbling to walk through that experience, and trusted a lot, of course, on Sam with a lot of these predictions and also fundraising, whatever. So it's certainly, very, it was the best experience of my life so far by a large margin.
Because people only get to see where things are now, and they think that, of course, these like bunch of smart people, from Silicon Valley just changing the world. But if you talk to a lot of, let's say, young people these days, like Gen Zs or Gen Alphas or something, especially in Asia, maybe for them, it's like they cannot get into this like a failure mindset, because for them that's like their life is over, right? They never take risks. Maybe because of social and cultural conditioning or like social expectations. And I don't think they're capable of thinking at a humanity level. When they're just like, oh, I gotta just do this test, and I don't know, just get a stable job. And that's the majority of the population, right? Especially young people. So I'm just wondering, like, are you just like wired differently? Is it because of your particular upbringing, or?
Look, I think so. I grew up in Germany, as I said, and I went to school and did my undergrad in Germany. Right. And Germany is like very much the way you just described.
Really?
What do you describe? Where like everyone wants to, like, starting companies is not really a thing that you really talk about.
So it is very similar to Asia.
It's very similar to Asia.
That's surprising. I actually thought that it would be more, because like German.
Maybe it is more. It's hard for me to quantify, but at least like all my smartest friends were dreaming of a job at McKinsey or Goldman Sachs or something like that.
Really?
No one was like thinking about, okay, I'm gonna build
this. So then what do you like? Are you influenced by some? I don't know. Like,
look, I think I always wanted to go to Silicon Valley. I remember when I was probably around 12 or something. So I was like always obsessed with like technology. I was always building things. But I read this. I read one of it's called Der Spiegel. It's like a big outlet in Germany.
Right.
And one of the title stories that was back then, was lying on our stairs, talked about this place called Silicon Valley, where like people build the future and like invent like all of these like new technologies. That never left me. So it's like I always told my parents and my friends that I'm going to move to San Francisco and I'm going to build companies.
Wow. Okay. But you had that confidence at the time, or is it something you just kept telling yourself and almost like manifested?
I don't know. I think.
Because maybe did you know?
Well,
that
it was just very set. So this was just like it was not debatable. Like that's what I'm going to do.
Right.
But in any case, the mindset you're describing, you still need to be exposed to, and I think that's actually what Silicon Valley is very unique, right? Where like somehow you get all these like very talented people coming together, and this idea of working on very ambitious things, even if they might fail, pretty rare. But I think something that is somewhat normalized in that environment, which might be one of the most important features.
Right.
About it.
So, for example, when you're talking to Sam Altman,
right?
Like, what kind of things does he say that makes you think, man, it's just like he just thinks different, other than everything you guys are doing right now?
It's the thing I learned from him is extreme simplicity. Mm-hmm. So actually, everything he says is always simple,
but profound.
Yeah, it's like it always takes things to the extreme, but it's always like so simple that it's almost like,
of course,
you're almost like annoyed by it. It's like, okay, great, but it's usually right.
Right.
And so I think, but yeah, I think he just thinks very, very extreme, very large scale, very, very ambitious, of course. But on the other hand, tries to break things down to the simplest things. And that's, I think, a very powerful feature to have. And it's actually very similar to sciences. Like the best scientists, they have the art of making very complicated things sound very, very simple. And because they understand them so well that they are able to explain you a very complicated thing in a very simple manner. And so it somehow feels similar to that.
I guess my kind of just follow up to that is, because we could, in this world, use more of people like you, right? That sense of innovation, risk-taking. It's just that my concern, just from what I've seen, even from my own culture, is that they don't think like that. And with the acceleration of AI, and also this type of like a Worldcoin type of crypto type of situation, people almost like lose further motivations, so to speak, or they just lose that sense of like, oh yeah, what's the point? Like, right. Everything's been done. Like, what kind of difference can I make? So do you think that it almost like demotivates already demotivated bunch of crowd, which is like 99% of the population, who just wants to be average, just want to stay safe and secure, if there is such a thing in life? Because you can't, they just want to stay where they are, just be safe and just get a well-paying job and never really maximize that human potential. Whereas, Silicon Valley, Sam, you guys are just thinking at a humanity level, how do we push humanity forward, right? So I just see this like a huge gap, and I'm like, how do we just bring more people up so that they think more like you, right?
And I think it's such an important question. I thought a lot about it in the context of Germany.
Oh yeah, right.
Right, because I hope my fellow Germans that maybe watch this video don't take that too personal, but I'm not too optimistic on the German economy as a whole.
Oh, interesting.
Right, I think a lot of the big trends actually have either already been missed or right. The country is just really late to.
And why do you think that is? Because it's there, right? It's there for the taking, but is it the leadership issue?
What's so interesting about it is like you have a lot of very, very smart and very educated people in Germany too.
Same here, same in right. Like everywhere.
And
right.
It really comes down to what is considered by society as the goal. Right? I really think it's like a very, very deep societal situation where it's always interesting for me, for example, to listen to Peter Thiel about these things. Like, he always says all these crazy things, but somehow about these particular topics is always extremely insightful. And for some reason, working at the large companies, in our case, it's like a lot of the automotive companies, BMW, Daimler, these kinds of things, like that is at least, or when I was a student, that was the goal for everyone. No one was talking about starting companies, taking risks. That, of course, doesn't really work, right? Because BMW at some point was a startup.
Right.
And how to fix that? I really don't know.
But well, at least indirectly, do you think that people just see what you do, and you obviously have the youth on your side. People are like, wow, he can do something like that. And then do you think that could just empower or inspire people somewhat? Or is that something you actually think about? Like,
that would be amazing. I'm not sure if that is the case, but I think inspiring other people, of course, is always incredible, or would be amazing. I think taking responsibility and challenging yourself to the maximum is just such a great thing to do as a young person.
I just happen to be very passionate about, just like not wasting human potential.
Yeah, totally. That's a good thing to be passionate
because,
about.
I just feel like there's so many smart people, I'm just afraid that it's only going to get worse. This lack of, let's say, critical thinking, problem-solving skills, or grit, just trying to figure something out and just not giving up. I think, I'm just starting to see less and less of that, which to me is quite concerning, because we need more engineers, we need more startups, but like I see that almost as like a survival skills in the age of AI. That as a human being, you need to be creative, you need to solve problems, because I'm sure there's still a lot of things that humans can work on.
Yep.
But my concern is that everybody just like, okay, there's nothing I can do now, right? What's the point?
These are, I always fluctuate between, I think this is definitely a potential outcome of AI.
Oh, really?
And it would be a very uninspiring outcome, and so I think that's why we collectively will not allow that to happen.
I would really appreciate that, yeah.
Because that would be so sad, right?
Yeah, right.
I think, but on the other side of it, which I think is actually the path we are on, is you have these AI systems and everyone has access to them, and you just have this like genie in a bottle, and like basically the limitation becomes your creativity, because you can ask any question, you can learn anything, you can maybe even have like a kind of your personal therapist that you want to discuss whatever is top of mind, and it will know you pretty well and kind of help to give you advice. I think that's in many ways, I think the path we are on is that it will drastically empower everyone and actually will make creativity and new ideas way more important, and will, people love to talk in Silicon Valley about this idea of a one-person, $1 billion company, right? So it's like,
which I guess now is possible with AI.
Not yet, but I think we will about to enter that time.
Wow.
Where I think you can, no matter who you are or where you are, with the right idea, you will get so much leverage, right? Because like particularly software engineering might not be as important anymore, or building a website doesn't take a week but 10 minutes, or solving a certain problem goes down to a couple minutes versus a couple weeks, and you don't need experts anymore. So like in many ways it will give so much more opportunity to everyone, no matter who you are. And I think that is an exciting future. It's like where you have a one-person, $1 billion company. That is something to aim at, I think. And I think we're going to get there relatively soon.
I think that would be very cool if we can get there. So what kind of ultimate outcome do you envision for Worldcoin and Tools for Humanity? Because I think you guys are just working on so many things. I mean, we haven't even talked about the whole wallet thing.
Right. I think that the large majority of the human population kind of relies and is empowered by our systems. So I think it's really coupled to scale. So I think really success means a lot of people use our systems and use them in their daily lives. That is clearly what success looks like. But yeah, you have like billions of people, 3, 4, 5 billion people that are in the Worldcoin system.
And is this something that you guys are actually working together with OpenAI on, or is it just more like a separate type of initiative? Because it sounds to me it's almost like there's almost like a partnership type of thing going on.
Well, I mean, so obviously Sam is part of both, and we do we discuss research efforts sometimes together, especially in policy things, but there's no like actual official partnership between the two entities. At least not yet. Might happen at some point.
But there could be areas where, you know, it's just because it's both crypto and AI. That's important. I can totally see, you know.
Yeah, especially I think like OpenAI has, as a result of their market power and tremendous user base, they need to talk to a lot of regulators and policymakers, and I think these are the kinds of things we can really collaborate on, because proof of personhood or verifying humanness will probably turn out to be a key policy challenge, and so hopefully we can work together on these kinds of topics, but we will see what the future brings in that regard.
Well, I guess lastly, what do you want people to know about what you guys are working on, Tools for Humanity, the company, as well as Worldcoin? Is there anything that you wish that people kind of talked about more, or is something that, or like, is there a call to action?
Well, I think the call to action is sign up, download the app, get verified if we're near you. I think it's going to be pretty fast-paced progress. I think like things will get better and better really fast, and I think you will be able to do a lot of cool things with both the app, but also the World ID itself. If you are technical, please apply. We hire in a lot of different offices, and we're really looking for the smartest people. Lastly, if you want to learn more, we have a quite extensive white paper that you can read, but then also just follow us on Twitter and all the public channels that we have. So we try to keep you up to date.
You know, this whole like building in public, let's say everything is open source. Like, does that actually work in your opinion? So how do you feel about building something in public or with the public? Because it's, you know, that obviously really starts in crypto industry, but even what we try to do as media companies, like we always want to be just transparent as possible, but still not many people are doing that, right? So this whole idea of building something in public, what's sort of like the biggest pros and cons, and you know, is that pretty much the only way forward?
For most traditional companies, you have some form of IP, and you have a lot of competitors.
Right.
And so let's say you're a biotech company and you work on a new kind of vaccine or new kind of
so product. If you just make that available.
Right, if you just make that available, it would be maybe not the smartest move. Well, what we are working on is we actually build public infrastructure. And if in 10 years from now, a large amount of people does not trust in the system, it will have failed, right? So it's like, it needs to be transparent so people can actually verify the claims you're making.
Right.
And I think it needs to be decentralized for it to work. Decentralized meaning there cannot be a central point of failure, because there might be all kinds of things going wrong, like a company might fail or run out of money, or you might have some governments being hostile to such a system and wanting to shut it down, etc.
Yeah.
And so for all of those cases, given we think what we do is as important as it is, it needs to be kind of a decentralized open protocol standard that everyone can rely on, no matter where you are or where you're from. And so to get there, we need to be transparent about it. Like, it's not Tools for Humanity, so the company, like, well, we have employees, we pay these employees, none of those things I think have to be public. Like, we don't.
Sure, like, not everything.
Right, okay. Not everything. It's like, I don't think it's important that our comp data is public or something, but the output that touches the protocol, I think, needs to be transparent and in the public all the time. And I think for someone like yourself, it's actually, I think the motivation is even different from what I could tell. I think it's both you are a journalist, so I think you're also building trust. So I think in that case we're somewhere similar. So I think you live off the trust that other people give you, and they trust you by knowing you and understanding that you're a good person and you have the right intentions. And so I think you can probably earn the trust by being more of yourself and just being that in the public. But then the other thing is, it is probably just also cool content, right? It's like, it might just be fun for people to see how you build such a successful channel and like how that actually works, and like how do you do these interviews, and like how do you make these videos that have that many views and something. So I think it's both you build trust and scale probably.
You're just at the bleeding edge of the technological revolution that we're going through, and no one is at the intersect of like AI and crypto, I think, as you and Sam Altman. So I think that's very cool. So thank you for taking the time to have a chat with us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.